Thank you everyone for joining, for tuning in. This event is put on by the Evergrey, which if you're not familiar with it, it's a daily newsletter, almost daily newsletter that's sent out to people in the community of Seattle to help them connect with their city and each other. And then Seattle Gay News, Maggie Bloodstone couldn't be here tonight, but she was super helpful in supporting this event and its creation. So big thank you to them. But yeah, this afternoon, we're going to be centering this conversation around Capitol Hill and its connection to the LGBTQ plus community over the years, so in the past, present, and also the future. And so joining us today, we've got a panel for really awesome people who do work in different areas. And so instead of me telling you all about them, I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. Jeff, would you mind getting us started?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Grace. And glad to be here. Again, my name is Jeff Sakuma, and I am a native Seattleite, born and raised, and this is where I still live. I have been active in the LGBTQI plus community for going on almost 4 decades now, and I've been a part of many different boards and organizations, and as well as working in sort of the HIV/AIDS field back in the 80s. Yeah, so that's who I am. And today I'm actually here as part of the AMP, the new AIDS Memorial Pathway, which will be having its grand opening this weekend, Saturday, up at on top of the new light rail station. So, but I'll talk about that more later. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Shelley, do you want to go?
Hi, I'm Shelley Brothers. I'm co-owner of Wildrose with Martha Manning, and I've lived in Seattle since 1992.
And Alanna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm actually speaking from Los Angeles today, so I'm on the unceded ancestral land of the Keech peoples, and my name is Alanna Francis. My pronouns are she and hers. I am the development and community outreach manager just kidding, I'm the manager of $3 Bill Cinema. I do a little bit of everything. We do some fundraising, we do community connecting. It's work that I've been doing for quite some time on a variety of boards and have really invested in the Seattle community. I was born in Southern California and grew up in Kenmore. So we were the 98155. We were Seattle until we got our own city name. And now we have a freeway exit sign. And so, yeah, I've spent the last 5 to 7 years working on Capitol Hill with a variety of nonprofits.
And Dee.
Hi, thank you, Grace. My name is Dee Ireland Lewis, and I've been a resident of Seattle since March of 1985, transplanted from Portland, Oregon, where I spent 5 years. I've lived on Capitol Hill the entire time. It says in my bio that I was the founder of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence Seattle chapter, which is true. After meeting the sisters in San Francisco, where I lived in the 70s, I always knew I had to do that somewhere and somehow. And when I moved to Seattle, there was a reason, of course. It was in the height of the AIDS epidemic. I felt like something needed to be done. Some assistance needed to be given. And so the sisters was my way of giving from my heart to the community, educating them on the epidemic itself, and giving support to AIDS victims and their families. So that being said, I've enjoyed living on the Hill for all of these years. Even though retired, remain as active as I possibly can, as far as giving whatever advice I can or whatever sharing I can with the community. I've been in the food and beverage industry as well the entire time. So working in major hotels and fine dining restaurants, or 24-hour dives, or 24-hour, great restaurants like 13 Points. Chris Steakhouse. I've done all of that. So I've spent my entire life in the food and beverage industry, as well as doing what I can for my community. And as old as I am, and have been living through a time when it was illegal to be gay, when there may have been one gay bar to go to, I just felt like I'm honored to be on this panel today to share the growth that I've seen from that time. I graduated from Stonewall happened. Right before Stonewall, I graduated from high school. So being 70 years old and just seeing the state of things, and I'm just glad to be part of this panel and to share what I feel is important.
Thank you, Dee. And that kind of, as you talk about the past, that kind of leads us off with the first question, which I want to ask, which is, historically speaking, and maybe like, the circumstances around other things, but my question is, why do you think Capitol Hill became such an epicenter for the LGBTQ plus community? Some of you guys have been around here longer than others. Jeff, I'm going to start this one with you just because you grew up in Seattle, and so you've been in Capitol Hill for a very long time. So yeah, what is it about Capitol Hill that lent itself to this community?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I'm not a historian per se, but have been around quite a while. Obviously the business or the bar scene, if you will, of the LGBTQ community has sort of moved all around the city. Actually, Pioneer Square was probably its original home, if you will. Belltown was sort of the epicenter at other times, but Capitol Hill is really where I think a lot of folks chose to reside. And I think that there are lots of reasons. Obviously, its proximity to the city, from the downtown core and to all of those social areas, but also at that time, which is going to sound really interesting now, and that it was a very affordable place with lots of apartments. And so, it was just a good place for myself, back in 1979, 1980, to find an affordable housing option with a group of friends in a big old house that we rented on the hill. So, and then also that there were some very, very prominent and significant businesses that began up there that really catered to the queer community. And so I think that also was sort of a way for us to define a space and place, if you will.
Anyone else have thoughts about what it is about Capitol Hill that makes it that lent itself, or maybe why you feel like it's changed or has retained that identity as a center or community for the LGBTQ community in Seattle?
Well, for me, again, I moved to Seattle in 1985. That was after spending multiple years in San Francisco after I graduated from high school. So when I turned 21, I specifically moved to San Francisco from Sacramento to be immersed in gay culture, because at that time it was the gay mecca of the West Coast. And so I wanted to be around successful people, doctors, lawyers, people in Congress, people that were active and vocal, people that were successful but gay, coming from a smaller city, even though it was the capital, in California. So after that, and moving around a bit here and there, when I moved to Seattle, the first feeling I got as I took Greyhound bus into the city was a feeling of San Francisco. I don't know if it was the hills or the water surrounding or exactly what it was, but I immediately felt like, oh my God, this feels like San Francisco. And then to see the majority of the gay community pretty much, or highly concentrated gay activity on Capitol Hill made me want to be here. And it reminded me in some ways of the Castro in San Francisco. So that's what made me come here and live here and want to stay in this area. And to this day, even through waiting 12 years to be placed in senior housing, I specifically requested through Seattle Housing Authority to be placed in or on Capitol Hill. I didn't want to leave it because I knew where everything was. It's easy to get around. My favorite places to go, eateries, businesses, from dry cleaners to restaurant. It didn't matter. So that was the feeling for me. And so Seattle gave me, from the very first moment I arrived, a San Francisco kind of feeling. So that to me is something deep in my heart that I just can't forget. And it has stuck with me all these years. And I'm grateful for the years in San Francisco that I had. And granted, Seattle has changed a lot and become sort of a different place. But that was what made me want to stay in the Capitol Hill area.
All right. Shelley, did you want to add something?
I just think that Capitol Hill resembles San Francisco, Long Beach, and I had lived in Long Beach for a long time, and I had the exact same feeling you did, Dee, when I moved here. It was like being immersed in gayness, I guess. You know?
Yeah.
I had lived for quite a few years in Reno, and you're not immersed in gayness.
Right. No. And you definitely were in Sacramento, where I was from, so no.
Right.
It's a whole different ballgame. And I want to add two things.
Was
One
like
thing,
Hollywood, you know?
yes.
Yeah.
The night that I arrived in Seattle, I was picked up at Greyhound bus station by the only two people that I knew that lived here, who worked with me in Portland at the Westin Benson Hotel at the time. They had moved up to Seattle, this couple, and I was left behind, but I got laid off with substantial severance pay. And I called them. I said, oh my God, I lost my job this weekend. And they said, fantastic. Take a Greyhound bus up to Seattle, and then just for fun, Monday morning, go with us to the Four Seasons Olympic Hotel and apply for a job, which I did. I was hired on the spot, and the rest is history. And the night that I arrived, the first place we went to on Broadway was Charlie's.
Uh-huh.
we went into the bar at Charlie's the night I arrived. I remember going to the jukebox and putting money in and playing my first song in Seattle was "Through the Fire" by Shaka Khan. And that's the history. And the rest is just, you know.
That's great.
Yeah, so kind of going off of what Shelley and Dee, what you were saying about like feeling sort of like at home, like there's this sort of sense of familiarity when you guys arrived in Seattle. Going off of that, I think it's, you know, one of the parts, I think, of being a part of like the queer community, what's really important is like finding a place or people that you feel comfortable with, where you feel accepted and you can just be yourself. And that's like really, really important. And obviously Capitol Hill was that for many people. And so Alanna, I want to ask you, was there a specific moment that you can think of where Capitol Hill in some ways sort of just, there's a moment where you were just like, yeah, I feel like Capitol Hill is like a place where I can be myself, I can feel comfortable, you know?
Yeah, I think I often forget just how freeing walking around on Capitol Hill is, but I really remember when I go and visit other places, right? And I'm a little bit more conscious of what I'm wearing, of my armpit hair, of my curly, you know, loudness. And when I'm walking around on the hill, oftentimes I'm like, free it all, doesn't matter. I can just be me, because that has been kind of what I've either reclaimed or many people around me have been really pushing, so that we're able to continue walking around and feeling that sense of community. I would say that I have spent a lot of time working in queer nonprofits and building, I was building up Young Professionals with Pride for a little bit, and really trying to identify people from across what professional meant and what we'd been taught professional meant, and really just finding students and people in various industries, whether restaurants or banking or tech, and really being able to see where do we have commonality and where can we build up some of those conversations and our resources, and within that 21 to 39-year-old demographic of how can we now take Capitol Hill and Seattle into this next wave of generations, and what that means and what we're looking for, and that level of, you know, taking tolerance and turning it into acceptance and empathy, and really having hard conversations. And I think that for me has been how I've built my community and maintained my community, and always looking for more community because there's more and more people coming out all of the time. This right now is the time to be in Seattle because we remember who we all are when the sun comes out and we see each other. I'm like, woo, when did you live in this city? I had no idea you lived in this city, right? And then people are thinking that about me. And so it's really just making sure that we're out in these 3 months that we get sunshine, and melt that Seattle freeze a little bit so that when we do go back into those clouds and we want to kind of hold ourselves, you know, up again, we have built up stronger community to be able to kind of have that resilience through that time, but also create the change that we want to have when we're out in the sun again. Right. So I think that's where I come from a little bit.
That was great. Yeah, I love what you said there about melting the Seattle freeze. And these next few months, hopefully, we know that a lot of things will melt these next few days with the heat, but hopefully everyone's going to stay safe. Jeff, I know you mentioned to me, like, you know, when you were growing up, you lived, I think, in the Central District of South Seattle, but then you would take trips up to Capitol Hill with your dad, who helped out with your uncle. But it was sort of like those trips that sort of made you come to like see Capitol Hill and, you know, gay people for the first time as like, you know, a kid. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Capitol Hill and Broadway specifically was considered auto row in Seattle, and a lot of those spaces, and you can still tell in some of those spaces, they were basically auto body shops, and they kind of lined from, you know, Pine all the way down Broadway. My uncle owned one of those, and my father, as his side job, would do the accounting for my uncle. So he would go in on the weekends, and I would tag along. And then it was a time where he'd say, well, get out of here and go do something. So then I would walk up Broadway, and I remember very distinctly walking into a men's clothing store called Peter's on Broadway. And going into this clothing store, and I was pre-adolescent probably at the time, but being very clear about that this was a queer space. And, and it was sort of, obviously I didn't know what that meant specifically, but I knew that this was a space that was for me on some level. I remember there was they sold After Dark magazines, which at that time I had no idea what After Dark magazine was, but I was always intrigued by the cover. And it was just sort of that, really that connection that I had. And obviously therefore, a few years later when I was moving out on my own, I immediately moved up to Capitol Hill because that was sort of for me sort of my community. And even though I wasn't clearly defining it at the time, I knew what it was in my heart. So.
Yeah, and I think, like, Shelley, I was hoping that you could speak to this because I think the Wildrose has been a place for a lot of people that, like, Alanna and Jeff and Dee have talked about, where they feel accepted maybe, for the first time after coming from X, Y, and Z. So could you talk about sort of how you, when you took over the bar, sort of made sure that you created a space that was welcoming of everyone?
That was one of the things that Martha and I have insisted on since the beginning, is that everybody is welcome at the Wildrose. They, if they have a good attitude, if they're, decent human beings, basically, then we want everybody to come in. We don't want to discriminate against anyone. We don't want to have to tell people they can't come in because they're not female or because they're not gay or whatever, because we've all got friends that are in different groups and it's just not fair. We've gone through that where we've been discriminated against. We've fought it all our lives. How could we turn around that discrimination? So we just ask that everybody treat each other with kindness and respect, basically. And if they can't do that, then they can't be in the bar. But that's been one of our, the Wildrose had a reputation before we took over. And that was one of the things, was being anti-male. And we've just insisted on treating everybody in a fair manner. That answer?
Yeah, I know, because when we wrote the story featuring the Wildrose, a lot of people, readers from the Evergrey, shared their own stories of just how important that bar was to them. So it's very cool to see places like that still exist, you know, and that are supporting the community and providing that place. Alanna, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I remember, I was trying to think about it. I was like, what was the first time I went to the Wildrose? And was remembering, as I was talking a little bit about adolescence, and I've often thought, I don't think about it in this way, right? But I grew up and went to school in North Shore School District, and out of that graduating class, there was really maybe a handful of people who were Black and who were queer, and let alone the intersections of those identities. And so really thinking about coming onto the Hill and every year being able to go to different bars that either have existed for a very long time and create that safe space and you can just be there, or new bars that are showing up or evolving over time, and really those spaces being spaces where you can just be, you can explore, you can wear what you want. And you generally know that if there is a situation, you can go to the bartender, you could go to the person at the door, and if you're feeling uncomfortable, and that will be handled. I think that's something that I have very much appreciated, especially being high femme. That comes with a lot of interesting boundaries and people. And so I really, really love the ability to go into spaces and know that you're surrounded by community in a general sense, and thinking over time how that has impacted those that are coming in generations after me, right? And quarantine, right? Many of those people weren't able to go and turn 21 at some of these bars, haven't really gotten that experience of the Hill, right? And what that can mean, and the pros and cons to all of that, right? Nothing is so dichotomous that there's not going to be maybe bad and good at once, but it is still this overarching space that we can have as ours.
I've been to the Wildrose a couple times, and I remember one of the times I went there was in the 80s, and I was a sister then. And I had heard about this, well, you know, they don't really want guys coming in, but that was not my experience. I went there, I was treated fairly, I had a really good time. I enjoyed my time there, I enjoyed my beverages, you know, and so I always felt welcome. And again, getting back to what has been said about just creating a space where everyone feels welcome, which is so important. And I applaud them for, I felt that back in the 80s. So I cannot say that I ever had a negative experience being a guy, a gay Black male, walking into and being served at the Wildrose. I never had a bad experience. And I do applaud the fact that they still stand by that and promote that. So it's a good thing. I mean, I wish it was that way everywhere that we went. I have had occasion to be asked at some places, the old Eileen's on Broadway back in the 80s. I was actually asked by a patron why I came there. Weren't there enough bars in my community to go to without coming there? Which offended the bartender who I really went there to see and hang out with, and a few other patrons, but I was actually asked that to my face. And it hurt me so bad that I stopped going in for a while, and I was a regular there. To the point that this particular bartender approached me on the street one day and she said, Dee, did someone say something to you? Or did someone do anything because you've not been coming in? And so I told her what happened. And I guess they spoke to this person, but literally I was asked, I mean, why do you come here? And so, you know, it existed, I've experienced it in places that you would never think that you would be questioned, that your dollar is just as green anywhere. You're there to spend money, have a good time, have a beverage, have some food, and be on your way. To be treated anything other than that is not acceptable. And so I have to say that there have been 2 places that maybe I have been questioned. Again, years ago, why are you here? Why are you in this particular establishment? They were straight establishments. And so I've always liked to break the ice, just like get it over with. You know, we can drink anywhere we want in Seattle, basically. You know, there should be no reason why you should not feel welcome to go anywhere and feel safe, have your beverage, have a conversation, or be with your friends and enjoy whatever it is that they offer. Otherwise, why would you be there? So at this Asian establishment across from Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, where I worked at the time from 2005 to 10, I was there with a friend of mine, and we were on our way to a concert at Paramount Theater. And when my friend, female lesbian, got up to go to the restroom, the person turned to me, and first he asked if she was my girlfriend, and I said, no, she's just my friend. And then he said, are you gay? And I said, yes. And he said, is she lesbian? And I said, yes. And he said, why are you here? And I said to him, where are you from? And he goes, I'm from Mississippi. And I just simply said, well, I'm sorry about Mississippi, but in Seattle, we can drink wherever we want. Now, that was not a problem with the establishment itself, but this was a patron sitting near me within earshot of our conversation and everything else. That question, why was I there? Which I found, and I wasn't offended by it, but that was just the mentality of where he had come from. I made it very clear and very quickly clear that in Seattle, we really can drink where we want. And that shouldn't be an issue. And that was the end of that.
So,
Restaurants and bars definitely have a strong power for building community, and even right for right now. And there's definitely still going to be some growth. I think a way that we can do that together is just listen. You know, when community members have feedback to give, you know, really check with ourselves. Why are we in the business that we're in? You know, are we here for ourselves? Are we here for other community create change? What are we in the business of? And is that being shown to who's coming in? Is that easy to find? Do people know that? Are we holding ourselves accountable? Are we afraid to hold ourselves accountable? You know, all of those things. And we have this new, not a new opportunity, but a refreshed lens off of having had to close down and really reevaluate our businesses and how will we succeed and how do we want to succeed? What does success even mean to us now? Right? And really look at that as an opportunity to further create space, right? There are still bars that I will get looked at, people I know will get looked at, there will be problems either from patrons, bartenders, or just the general energy shift, you know, that definitely exists now. And so it's really looking at, you know, what are we here for? Why are we, what are we doing? You know, because it just doesn't serve us anymore to not serve us.
Right.
Yeah, I think that safe space goes beyond the establishment, and that's what Capitol Hill provides, is that safe space has to exist when you step out of the establishment as well. And you know, there was a time when, you know, there were bars and you literally had to, you know, kind of sneak your way out because you weren't sure what you were going to encounter on the street when you walked out the door. I mean, and that, you know, those kind of things exist today. And so I think that that's sort of the physical community piece of this that's so important, is that both it's what's inside the establishment and then what greets you when you leave the establishment.
Yeah.
That kind of leads into this question that I wanted to ask about, I don't know if everyone's familiar or not. I know, Alanna, you brought this, instance up, and I think it's important to talk about, like you had mentioned. Last week, I think it was last week, there's two of the people who were in charge of or producing the Capitol Hill Pride event. They wrote a letter to the city Human Rights Commission, I believe, basically just saying that they felt that it was reverse racism, that taking Black Pride, which is an event that's happening on Saturday at Jimi Hendrix Park, which is focused on centering Black and brown, queer and trans people of color, that it was unfair that they were asking that people who are white or in positions that aren't as marginalized to pay a reparations fee so that other people, so that they can fund the event for it to be free for the Black and brown folks who are queer and trans who would want to go there. This sort of was like a big ordeal, and you can read about it. But I'm wondering, we've come so far, like we were saying, in creating spaces like Capitol Hill and places on Capitol Hill where folks from our community can feel safe. But clearly there's still much room for improvement. So how do we work towards creating spaces and communities that aren't only safe and welcoming, but acknowledge sort of the past history of marginalized groups, like in the case of taking Black Pride. And Jeff, you just mentioned how, it isn't limited to just these spaces and stuff, but we really got to do it beyond these spaces and, how we think about it. And so I know it's a sort of a big question, but, how do we start sort of working to improve that?
Well, me personally, I have to say that I probably spend more of my social time these days at my age into what you may call straight establishments, but I just feel like I go where everyone's welcome and where I know the people, I know the owners, where I know a few of the regulars, and I've been there, and so places close to where I live. And again, I'm treated fairly, and I love that. I love being able to be who I am within inside. I don't have to hide the fact that I'm gay. It's just, this is what it is. This is the picture, this is what it is. But I'm treated like anyone else, and I'm respected. So I have yet to, at least lately, and even before the pandemic, 3 years ago, places that I frequented, even on Broadway, where I felt like I was unsafe or not welcome. And I enjoyed my time there. I think that reaching out, and I don't know how many people do this, I don't know if reaching out is even the right word or phrase to use, but sometimes stepping out of your comfort zone and stepping out of where you know that, okay, I've been here for years, or I've been there for years. I want to go someplace else. I just want to hang out. If I have one conversation night with anyone of a sincere and searching sort, my job is done by who I am. And so that's always been one thing that I've said to myself when I went out anywhere. Unknown places, strange places, and sometimes specifically not a gay establishment, but just to see what is the tone here and how am I treated? Just walk in, because again, like I said, all of our money is the same. All of our money is green. We can all pay for our drinks or pay for our food. If you like the atmosphere, or you like what's on the menu, if you like the drinks they serve, then go. What's the big deal? And upon entry, if you're going to be treated fairly or not. I think that at least I felt that. So I've enjoyed, after, I would say, the last probably maybe 10 years, maybe 15, socially just going out to a place to have a drink or to meet friends for cocktails. And I have to say that going into the gay bar is maybe not my first choice. I just want to go wherever I feel like going. I want to be able to be who I am and show who I am. I want to wear what I want. And I want to sit down, order. And again, if I have one conversation a night, or whenever I go there, then my job is done. And so I've done that for years, and I've enjoyed it. I've made some wonderful friends, and I don't know. It's almost been like a mission to test the barometer of where can we go. We, when I say we, I mean specifically LGBTQ. Is it only the gay bar? Is it only that? Or may I go down the street to my favorite eatery down the street and be okay, and have them be okay with me coming in? And generally, I have to say it has been. And so I just feel like, again, it's an accomplishment. I wish that every place was like that. I truly do. That why can't we just, we're all people. And one thing that I always say, you know, when it comes down to it, we all bleed, we all eat. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And the money is the same. So that being said, sometimes I do like to just test the water and see what's going on and make a friend over here. They're not the same as me. They're absolutely the opposite. This place is the opposite, but go in and I will know if I'm being treated fairly. I respect and love that there was one bar when they were in Cha-Cha and on the old space on Lower Pine, in the Pine Corridor. And of course they moved, but I went there a lot because I loved the camaraderie in there. I have to share this story. I was a regular at Eileen's on Broadway because it was close to home. And one night, two of my friends at Eileen said, "Oh, Dee, have you ever been to Cha-Cha before?" And I said, "No." And they said, "You would love Cha-Cha because it's like this," meaning the people were, it was so small and so tiny, it was so packed. So, oh, cool, we went down there. We took a cab from Eileen's and went over there. There was a line to get in. We got in this tiny Mexican bar that had this music playing, and it was really nice. But there was a sign outside on the door that said, if you are an asshole, if you are bigoted or blah, 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 or if you are homophobic, do not come in. Didn't know at the time it was a gay owned and operated bar, but most of the kids in there were straight. So we went in there, and here's the story. My friends ordered the first couple of rounds of drinks, and I felt like it was my turn to go up and get some drinks for all of us. So I went to the bartender and I said, "May I please have 2 Tecatis and a tequila and soda?" And he presented them to me. And I said, "How much is that?" He said, "No charge." And I go, "What?" He says, "You are a breath of fresh air." Literally, this is the story. And so that started my going to that place because of the way that I was treated. I had my 48th birthday party in that bar. I'm gay. I sat on a bar stool and there was a constant line from the front door to my bar stool for hours to people stopping by to say hello on my 48th birthday in Cha-Cha. So, you know, I just feel like, again, I think we should be able to go where we want, to be who we are, to say what we say. There are people out there that want to know who we are. And they're going to be the haters. They're going to be the haters. There are going to be the ones that don't want you around. So be it.
Yeah.
But I think reaching out is what I, in my personal life, has always found joy in. And then coming and saying, "Wow, that was really, really cool." And then to have friends when I'm taking people, I have never seen so many like straight people coming up to you and sharing. And, you know, and to me, that's beautiful. I mean, what are we here for? Except to do this and mingle, be a part of one another.
I think, do totally what you're saying, kind of going off of that, you know, really building community and stuff. And I know, Jeff, your work with the AIDS Memorial Project is one effort to sort of, capture history and remember it, but also, bring together community. So I'd love for you to talk more about that. And Alanna, I'd also love for you to talk a little bit about your work with $3 Bill Cinema and sort of, how you're really trying to uplift voices in, an industry that oftentimes they're marginalized. So Jeff, would you mind talking about maybe this Saturday's ceremony and sort of the project?
Yeah, thank you. So this is a project that we've been working on for the past 5+ years now. And it really has three very specific purposes, and that's a space for reflection and remembrance about the HIV/AIDS epidemic that occurred and still is occurring. Sharing stories of both of people who obviously have lived and died of HIV/AIDS, as well as people sort of working in the area, in the field, if you will. And then lastly, it's really about a call to action. In other words, again, that we are not out of this epidemic. It is still going on. There are still people who are need our assistance, but also just a general call to action that this HIV/AIDS was really about not only sort of the disease and illness, but also about a community coming together and sort of being called to action, to act, to really make sure that people live with as much humanity and that their deaths were with great dignity. So the AMP is that it's made up of 4 major pieces of art that will be throughout the plaza, and this is on top of the Capitol Hill Light Rail Station. We were very, lots of things sort of happened and came together at the exact same time when we wanted to find a space for this, and that this space was being created on top of the light rail station. It's called the AIDS Memorial Pathway because it starts with a centerpiece work by a gentleman by the name of Christopher Paul Jordan that snakes through the plaza area and then ends with a piece of Cal Anderson Park at the very north end with another piece at that end. And then there's a piece by Stormy Weber, which is inside one of the buildings, a beautiful reflection of photographs. And then there is a series of signs that were real protest signs during that time by a group called Civilization. So it is super exciting, and we are in fact having our opening, I believe it's at 10, get there around 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. Luckily, we're doing this before the heat really kicks in, but it'll be a very exciting day for us.
Awesome. And Alanna, I know that you guys are currently working on $3 Bill Cinema is currently working on the Seattle Queer Film Festival, which is set to happen in October, correct?
Yeah, October 14th to the 24th is the Seattle Queer Film Festival. This is our 26th year. And in May, we had Translation Seattle Transgender Film Festival. And so both of those film festivals are annual festivals. We have increased to monthly programming this year. Really, when we had the pandemic hit, it affected everyone, we went virtual. And we're one of kind of the first festivals to do that in 2020 with translations, and we're able to come together with Northwest Film Forum and other really amazing organizations like SIF, just kind of as our past relationships and as we evolve them now, and really trying to create change within film. Cinema and media are kind of what creates that normalization of communities within society. And so a lot of the work we've been doing with $3 Bill Cinema has been to really reframe and realign and look at what power do we have to support normalizing all of our communities. And that meant really looking at, okay, well, we have the Seattle Queer Film Festival. What does queer mean? Though our work for years has included a bunch of intersections of queerness and LGBTQIA folks, the intention that's going forth is really to, how can we expand that out of representation and into action, right? With more forums, more times for our filmmakers to come together, more connection with other organizations, nonprofits, film festivals that are doing similar work. Really looking at nonprofits as that next layer of change. We have our activists, we have grassroots, we have groundwork, and then we have people who are paid to do this work, where it's about us because it's personal. I'm queer, I love film, it's personal to me, but the impact isn't personal. It is across the board. And so really trying to put myself in and take myself out at the exact same time to really learn and continue to evolve and invest in other communities, creating that same opportunity. We were able to go into rural communities. We were able to recognize, right, not everybody can or wants to drive to come to the cinema. Not everybody, right, with parking changing on the hill, that's going to impact everything. People working various hours, that really impacted who was able to attend our events, and virtual allows us to reach many more people and represent many more people, and really kind of take what we're doing and, you know, make it more tangible, really invest in our relationships with community members, with filmmakers, other resources and nonprofits. So really increasing, when you're looking at a film from us, we're not just going to throw this film at you. We want it to also serve as a resource. What other nonprofits could you connect with, right? Like POCAN. This would be a place that you could connect. Here's their link. So kind of creating some more bridges between all of these queer nonprofits that exist, that are doing similar yet different work that overlaps just to better us all, and really kind of opening up the potential into more. What more can we do, right? Like, can we get some grants going for filmmakers? Can we talk to Hollywood one day and, you know, just have like a little pathway for all the queer and trans filmmakers to just go in and that's theirs, right? Right, looking at these things that can eventually not put us out of business, but evolve us into what's next, because we're not, you know, HBO Max has great queer representation right now, right? But how can we get more? And it's 2021. So when we think of somebody, who do we think of? We have folks across every single aspect of life. We have houseless, we have high wealth, we have people in politics, we have people everywhere. So how can we ensure that those who are coming into this language of queerness recognize where they themselves belong within it? I think is an aspect that media and our organization is definitely working towards, really just to kind of get to a better just world through this beautiful representation in media. Because the artists out here, I mean, I would say a newbie in the film realm. It's but the artistry is phenomenal. The documentaries, the stories, the truths, the ability to be able to have some hard conversations with family and not use myself as the example, and be able to talk on screen really allows.
Oh, I think we lost your audio there for Alanna.
Oh, well, we're back, and it can
Okay.
be somebody else's, because I got the little
Okay.
sign that says your internet's unstable.
Okay. Okay. Well, in that case, Shelley, I'd also love, because I know the Wildrose has supported artists in the terms of like music and like, you know, those sorts of things at the bar. So I don't know, do you have anything going on this weekend? And can you talk about how, I think you guys were part of like, you know, Save Our Stages or Keep Music Live Washington, the Wildrose. So could you talk a little bit about that? You're on mute right now. There we go.
Yeah, we are a member of WANMA, which was created during the pandemic. It's called Washington Nightlife and Music Association. And that was created from a campaign called Keep Music Live, which was to bring attention to the fact that all of the live music venues across the US closed. And in Washington, they're still not open. You know, there's a couple that have opened back up and are doing very, very targeted small shows, you know, with the restrictions that we're under. But as of June 30th, they will be able to open up fully too. So Keep Music Live was a Washington-based campaign to help out all these venues. And it's been phenomenal. And they were also, quite a few of the people involved were very involved with getting the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant through Congress with Amy Klobuchar. And So it's gotten quite a lot of national prominence because of the work that they did. And that work was not being done by anyone else. So they stepped up at a great time. We do a lot of DJ nights. We do live bands. We do spoken word nights, drag shows, karaoke. So we try to keep our programming pretty, a good mix, so we can get a bunch of different people to come in and appreciate. Because there's not a lot of small rooms around where it's easy to get a gig, if you're starting out or you don't have a big following, or you want to do a drag show or something like that. So it's been great. And usually at Pride we're like filled up with music, but not yet.
Hopefully we're getting
We
close.
will have DJs this weekend, and there will be a performance by Adrebu and D Dynasty outside on 11th on Sunday evening.
Awesome. Well, we just have like a few minutes left. We have one question, and I think this is kind of a good place to maybe to wrap up the conversation. But how we've already kind of talked about this, but how has the pandemic impacted Capitol Hill and your organization or business or community? And what future do you envision for the neighborhood of Capitol Hill?
I have seen, just from recent visits, first of all, I want to say I'm really glad that the three favorite places on Broadway that I love to frequent, actually four, remained open or were able to survive. That was Corvus and Company, the Bait Shop, La Cochina Mexican restaurant, and Boca restaurant. They were able to survive somehow, and I'm just so glad for them. And I have been back and visited all of them, with the exception of Bait Shop, since the pandemic. But it was difficult, and my heart went out to those people and those businesses and those friends and employees. One specific friend had to move and leave Seattle because she couldn't survive, couldn't stay here, couldn't pay the rent, and she was a bartender at Corvus, so she moved to Philadelphia. She has come back and visited, and we had a reuniting visit at Corvus on a layover she had on her way to Las Vegas, and that was very cool. Bank of America, as most of you know, closed on Broadway. That's where I do banking. Hana Sushi, which was a staple for so many years on Broadway, closed, and something is in its place now. Charlie's is not there anymore. So it was sad to see. It is sad to see some places that just didn't make it and had to go away. But I'm just thankful for the ones that did survive, that have been there. I will continue to support them because I do love Broadway, even though I live closer to 15th Avenue East now. It's easier to just go out my back door and go over to Smith's or something. But I do miss the flavor of Broadway in particular. I mean, some of you don't know, and of course some do, but back in the day, the entire Pride celebration was on Broadway. That was where the parade was. The rally was in Volunteer Park before we were able to go and be on 4th Avenue downtown and get Seattle Center. Everything happened on Broadway, a fair before, the week before, and then the grand parade down Broadway, from Upper Madison down Broadway, and then ending in Volunteer Park with a huge rally. Those were festive days. They were beautiful and memorable experiences. And so we've gotten bigger now. We outgrew Broadway for Pride celebrations, and we made it downtown to where they have the Starlight Parade and all those other major parades. Okay, we're there now. We get to go to Seattle Center and celebrate our rally or our after parade activities. That's huge. I'll be glad. Hopefully next year we have the real deal again, and we are able to be downtown and be back in Seattle Center. But as far as the businesses go, some have suffered. That's a sad thing. I mean, I'm sure we all have friends that we haven't seen for 3 years because we've been in isolation, quarantine. You know, and I know I do. You know, I've got friends I have not seen in going on the 3rd year, just because things are just starting to open up. So I'm glad that the businesses that survived are back on track and getting some business in. It'll be nice to see that just flourish.
Yeah, and I think in the interest of time, I want to pass it on to others to have a chance to talk about, I think mainly just sort of what they envision the future of the neighborhood of Capitol Hill to look like. So, you know, like we've been talking about, it's changed a lot over the years, as you can all attest to. And there's been a lot of progress. So where do you think it's headed? Yeah, do any of you have an answer ready?
I think we just, you know, oh, it says my internet connection's unstable again. So you just,
We can hear you.
okay, good. You just let me know if this voice goes bye-bye. You know, I think we have an opportunity. I was maybe saying this a little bit earlier as well. We all had to shut down. We had to slow down. We had some have to come back completely differently. Some get to come back the same ways that they were. But I would hope that we really took this time that was really tragic and really hard for many, many people to come out of how are we going to do things differently? We have seen where things really truly don't work. And so how can we move together more authentically? We have a lot of different communities that make up queerness, make up LGBTQ, 2IA+. It just kind of depends, right? There's a lot of demographics within that. How are we going to take the city of Seattle and really intentionally incorporate all of those demographics of people within queerness in our businesses, you know, in our resources, in our times together? And I think inviting people to come to the table often is where we've landed, but that doesn't really work when people have been at the table and been having conversations and it's not been heard, it's not been respected, it's not been listened to. And we, you know, on the Hill, we're still having times where aspects of our communities are coming against each other, and that means at the risk and safety of another part of our community. And that just doesn't serve us anymore. I shouldn't be concerned about going to a Pride event this Saturday and that there will be other people there who don't want me to exist in my full freedom.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so that is where allyship comes in. Capitol Hill is a place filled with allies, whether you are queer, LGBTQ or not, you are still an ally to somebody, right? And that is often a title that those who are marginalized get to give. It's not one that we get to claim for ourselves, but it's one we can strive for. And that's where I see, I feel like we're in this like little pause, we're in a little bit of a phoenix time, burn some stuff, come from the ashes, you know, and we're figuring out what do we get to choose now. Right? What do we want to pick to take with us into that next stage? And what do we maybe need to burn and let fertilize our delicious soil? You know, and that's okay. And that it doesn't erase, it is just building upon a foundation, right? Because it's still to honor the pathways that we have gotten here with and on, and the ones that are still forming. And how can we do that? Because I think the safety risks really are still pretty much there and just changed in how they look and depends on who and perspective. But I think we have a lot of growth to do, though we have come very, very far, and it doesn't negate that. And also we have very far to keep going. And I really am excited and hopeful that that is what we continue to do, and that we don't just, settle and get comfortable and say, oh, you know, let's just go back to the way it was, you know.
No, let's not.
I mean, we had beautiful gardens at Cal Anderson, right? Like that depends on perspective. Somebody might not like that, but if we're not giving back to our people, then what are we doing? You know, it's exhausting, and people are tired, and people have been doing this for generations and millennia. And, you know, come on, it's our time. It's a chance. We have a chance to strive, and that is what I'd like to see. No more. I don't want more social media and news updates all the time of somebody tearing us down, somebody from within us, somebody from without, or it doesn't matter. Honestly, it's time for some therapy. We need some therapy. Ideally, if it was paid for by the state, that'd be great. We can just talk about that later. But, there's some things that we've been carrying passed down from generations and from our own experiences, and that's implementing and impacting people when it should be that we need to look at ourselves, and we've been too removed from ourselves. And so that's kind of where I think we have this opportunity from the hardship of the past couple of years.
Yeah, so I think that all neighborhoods and communities evolve and change, and and that's just part of what happens. And I think what the AMP is striving to do as well is that regardless of how that change occurs, that we honor the past and really remember. And that's not to say that the community is not going to be queer anymore. It just means that we have to make sure that we continue to remember what has happened in our community and how do we honor that as well.
We are out of time, but Shelley, did you have anything to add? I wanted to give you the chance to say anything if you would like. You're on mute. There you go.
Doing that. Sorry. I think that the pandemic has given us a chance to change our way of dealing with each other. And I really hope that what can come out of this is more kindness and more respect for each other. And I don't know if it will or not, but that's what my hope is. And I think that's what we just have to keep showing within our community. And we can heal these problems we have within it. I don't think they're insurmountable, but they do require us to all sit down and take a good hard look and come up with solutions, because there's a lot of things that just aren't working for a lot of people, and that's not fair. And we want to change that. The gay community has always, been at the forefront of equality, trying to be, and equity too. And I think we need to jump in full force.
Yes.
And set the tone and set the way.
Well, that's a great way to end this conversation. I just really want to reiterate how thankful I am for all of our awesome panelists for joining and donating their time. I know you are all busy. Shelley, I know you're trying to get ready for Pride Week, and Jeff, you're getting ready for the AMP opening, and Dee and Alanna, you've got your own things going on. So I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully people who tune in and watch this will check out the things that you're a part of, and maybe check out some stuff that you're a part of this weekend, since that's happening. And with that, be sure that you're all subscribed to the Evergrey. It's free. You can head over to our website. And yeah, stay cool out there. Thank you so much for joining, and happy Pride, everyone.
Grace, thank you
Bye.
for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace.